25 milligrams over 3 to 5 minutes. Do you know what I'm referring?
Yes.
Okay. And do you recall in his statement that he also said before doing so that he turned off the saline before infusing the 25 milligrams of propofol?
Yes, I do recall that.
And with the court's permission, if you could step down. Number one, could you just explain to us how that would be infused and how you would turn off the saline?
Can I just inquire, at this time, is there going to be any demonstration of propofol?
Yes.
May I see the attorneys?
Yes.
Thank you.
With the court's permission, may Dr. Shafer step down?
Yes, and remember the admonition to try to speak as loudly as you can and position yourself about midway through the jury box. Thank you, sir.
And if you could, number one, where would one infuse 25 milligrams over 3 to 5 minutes?
Typically, one would do that. Let me move this just for clarity. Typically, one would do that at this point here.
And you're pointing
and I'm pointing to the stopper that is about 3 feet from the patient. That's the stopper with the little rubber injection port. So one would typically infuse the propofol about here.
And that's also maybe referred to as a Y connector?
As a Y connector, correct.
Okay. And how would one turn off the saline?
You would use a clamp, and there was that little white clamp you can see right there. I think it's probably there. On the exhibit currently on the elbow projector, there is a white clamp, and that's intended to completely shut off the infusion line. For this particular infusion here,
And Dr. Shafer, referring to People's 157,
yes,
it's the same white clamp?
it's that white clamp there, yes.
Okay.
In this case, it would be this clamp right here. And I can just slide this, and it pinches the tubing. And when it pinches the tubing, let me just show you. You can see that with that clamp off, I've got a nice stream here. And I'll aim it to the trash can. As soon as I clamp this, it stops running because I've pinched the tubing.
Okay. So once according to Conrad Murray, he shut off the saline and then slowly infused 25 milligrams over 3 to 5 minutes. So assuming he shut off the saline, what would be the next step?
You would draw up 2.5 cc's of propofol.
Okay. And could you do so, please?
Sure. Now, so again, I have to put air. So I'll draw this back to 2.5 cc's.
Can I step over there just a little bit?
You may.
Is my position okay?
I just want to see this syringe. Can I see
Oh, of course.
Be
yeah.
careful.
Be careful.
Can you hold on?
It's not here, but
It's the same one that we used yesterday.
For the jurors, can you see?
Yes.
Indicating affirmative. All right?
This is the same one that I used yesterday. I removed the little protective cap. So I draw up the air I inject the air, which allows me to remove 2.5 cc's. And so there you have 2.5 cc's of propofol in the syringe.
And what size syringe is that?
This is a 20 cc syringe.
Okay. And what was recovered was 10
It was a 10
cc.
cc syringe, yes.
And so how would one inject that into the infusion line then?
One would, now, Dr. Murray, in his interview, described that he clamped the infusion line first, as I have done here. And he said he slowly gave this over 3 to 5 minutes. I'm going to do it just a little bit faster, not too much faster.
And the propofol is going down the tubing?
Propofol is now going down the tubing. And what you see is that it's all in the tube. None of it reaches the patient. So even if I had injected this over 5 minutes, no propofol has gone to the patient with this particular tubing set, and I have to do a little bit of calculations on the geometry of the other set. But an anesthesiologist, a nurse anesthetist, anybody who is familiar with IV injections knows that you don't turn this off. Because by turning it off, you're preventing the drug from getting to the patient.
Objection, this is non-responsive to any question.
I'll overrule the objection, but we'll have another question.
Thank you. How does the saline work as it comes down the line to, for example, in this case, the 25 milligrams of propofol, how does the saline work to push that into the body?
If this is running, as every drop goes here, a few moments later, it comes out here and goes to the patient. If you're going to give drug over 3 to 5 minutes, you don't clamp this. That's not a smart thing to do, because if you do, the drug just sits in the tubing. But that's what was described by Conrad Murray.
And that's because the saline is not coming down to force it through the tubing.
Sometimes we call this a carrier solution. And the notion is it's carrying the drug with it. Sort of like injecting the drug into a river. And the drug flows down the river. If you stop the river, it does not go to the patient. And that's what was described. So what was described as a 3 to 5 minute slow injection, depending on the geometry, and I have not calculated the actual geometry there on my to-do list. But the drug, some significant fraction of the drug, and perhaps all the drug, just sits in the tubing. And when it goes to Michael Jackson is when this is opened up. Shall I demonstrate?
Wait, so you're unclamping the saline line now?
So first I have to prepare the...
Why don't you you can discard the remainder of the water in the bottle.
Actually, I wanted to use it as ballast, just to hold it up, if that's okay.
All right, that's fine. I just don't want us to misunderstand what's in there.
Right. But
You're going to make sure that whatever...
I will look after the disposal. No, it actually needs to be down because of the purposes of gravity. So, if I put this here, inside the...
Ladies and gentlemen, if you want to stand because it's below your line of sight, that's fine.
This is a little higher than Michael Jackson would be, but I can adjust for that by raising this up just a touch. No, I can't. Okay. So now when I unclamp this, it flows into the patient. But it didn't flow into the patient while this was clamped. So even though it was described as a slow infusion, the drug was sitting here and then it's being bolused in.
So essentially sitting in the tubing until the saline is unclamped so it can flow through and push the propofol into
Correct.
Michael Jackson.
Correct. Because of the way it was described, which was not the way somebody trained in the administration of intravenous drugs would do this. You wouldn't clamp this, give the drug, and then unclamp this. It doesn't make sense.
Okay. Now going back to the infusion line and the infusion setup then. So you previously spiked the 100 milliliter bottle.
Correct.
Okay. And that is what would you call this line? If the other one's hooked up to the saline, this line is what?
This is the infusion line right here with the vented set.
And is that connected to the saline line?
Yes, this then gets connected to the saline line at the same Y port that we just demonstrated.
And could you do that for us, please?
I first need to run, I would not do that until I run the protocol through this.
Okay,
Shall I do that?
please,
May I hang it from here to run it?
please.
Okay.
Just for the record, what are you doing?
I'm going to run propofol into this line, because otherwise you would give the patient air.
You said you're hanging it.
I'm going to hang this bottle from this IV pole.
It's not people's start that he's using.
I'm not using People's 30. I'm using a new 100 ml bottle.
That's why we need the record to be clear about that.
Thank you.
This is for demonstrative purposes. That's not the item of evidence.
Correct.
Now, because this is a vent, let me first show you. If I close this vent and I open everything else up, a little bit of drug flows through. Let me make sure everything's open here. But it stops because there's no way of getting air into that. And it will not run until I allow air to go in. And once I allow air to go in, it runs and it really quite races through the line until it will finally come out and here. So now this has been run through to this point here. Now I can hook this up to give an infusion. This is done by attaching a needle to this end. And that needle is then placed in the same location,
In the Y port of
in the Y port of the carrier set,
which is the saline tubing.
like that.
That's the saline tubing?
And this is the saline tubing here. And the infusion line is brought down to the Y connector.
And is the propofol now traveling through the tubing?
It will if I turn this on.
Okay. Are you prepared to do that at this time, or was there another aspect of the setup that you wanted to demonstrate?
Well, I just wish to say that this is an extremely unsafe setup because gravity is responsible for driving both of these. Gravity is driving them, and they are competing with each other for gravity. If I raise this up quite high, there's more force here, and this rate will slow down. If I drop this down, then there's more force here, and it will speed up.
Just a moment. This referring to the saline bag,
I'm so sorry. It does.
here referring to the propofol setup.
May I restate?
Go ahead.
Could you please restate?
If the speed of the drip depends on the relative heights of the propofol drip and the saline bag. If the saline bag is raised up, there's more force on the saline bag from gravity, and the speed of the propofol drip will slow down. If the saline bag is lowered, then there's more force of gravity from this and it will speed up. If the saline bag is turned off, this will speed up quite a bit because there's no pump controlling the rate of this. You're dependent on gravity. And the set is not designed to be used that way. The set is designed to be used with an infusion pump controlling it right here. But there was no infusion pump. So it's an intrinsically dangerous setup. May I demonstrate?
Please.
Okay. So we'll put this with a catheter, 22 gauge catheter. It was a Michael Jackson. We'll put it right here. I'm just going to giggle it on. Tip over. And the only way of controlling the rate is these two clamps.
And you're talking about the two clamps?
And the two clamps
Wait. Remember?